Welcome to our talk about Beyond Mendel's Laws of Inheritance, Incomplete, and Codominance. This is part 2, Codominance. Now, codominance is a bit different. Incomplete dominance had them blending. Codominance means that two traits show up at the same time, separately. So, unlike red and white making pink, now we might have something like white and pink crossing, but our combination isn't sort of a light pink. It's actually pink and white together. So it's a combination. They both show up at the same time. The example we looked at in class for codominance was human blood type. But human blood type is actually a tiny bit more complicated than just being codominance, because there's a recessive trait as well. So A and B are the alleles in blood type we consider codominant. The reason is that both A and B code for proteins called antigens that show up on the surface of the blood. And if you have both an A allele and a B allele, it will code for both A and B antigens. Both of those will show up on the surface. If you look at the picture there, you can see what that would look like. Now, the O allele is recessive to both A and B, and that's because the O allele, the gene that you inherit when you inherit an O allele, actually doesn't code for any protein at all. But if you just have one O allele, you'll still make the A or B protein that you have on your other allele. So it's only if you have two recessive O alleles that your blood won't make any antigens at all, and the surface of your blood cells won't have any sort of markers on it. So we can do Punnett squares with blood type and see what that might mean. So if we have a man with type AB blood and a woman with type O blood, what would be the blood types of their offspring? And I think you should try to do this before I give you the answer. So I'll give you a moment. Alright, so we have AB blood. That's going to have both A and B antigens on the surface of the blood. And we have type O blood, which means no antigens on the surface. When we draw our Punnett square, we have AB as one of our parents and OO as the other. Now remember, we knew that the woman with type O had two O alleles because she's recessive, and there's only one way to be recessive. Now, our genotypes for our offspring, we will have two offspring with AO and two offspring with BO. Yes, that's always funny every time we say it. Now, the AO offspring will have A antigens on their blood, so they will be blood type A, because they are making A antigens. Even though they do have one gene that's not making any antigens at all, they still have another gene on their other homologous chromosome that's making A antigens. So both of our AO offspring are going to have A blood type and be making A antigens. Our BO offspring are both going to have B blood type. So half of their children will have A blood type and half of their children will have B blood type. But do remember that probability is not destiny. This is just the probability. They could still have all children with A and all children with B. But overall, if they had 100 children, about half of them would have A blood and half of them would have B. But notice none of them would have A, B, or O blood type. Now let's talk just a little bit more about human blood. We did mention, of course, that you could have A and B antigens on your surface. There's actually a second type of protein that you can have on your surface called the Rh factor. And that's what gives you the positive or negative in your blood type. So you've probably heard people say, I have AB positive blood or I have O negative blood. That's what the positive or negative means. So having the Rh factor, then you have a positive. And if you don't have the Rh factor, then you'd be negative. Now, the reason this is important is if you are given blood that has an antigen, a protein that your body doesn't recognize, a process called agglutination happens. This causes blood clotting because your body attacks the blood. And these blood clots can cause strokes and could actually cause you to die depending on how much blood that you got that wasn't your own blood type. But you don't actually necessarily have to get exactly your blood type. You just have to get blood that has only antigens that your body is familiar with. So if you look at this chart, you can see what types of blood people can give to other people and also what types of blood they could receive in a transfusion. So we call the AB positive blood type the universal recipient, because if you notice, they can receive any type of blood. And that is because they have every single possible antigen on their blood, so their body isn't going to attack any kind of blood, no matter what kind of blood you give them. So, if you have AB positive blood and you're in a car accident, you're in luck because you can receive any kind of blood. The universal donor is O negative blood, and that's because O negative does not have any antigens on its surface. It has no proteins, which means if you give O negative to somebody, no matter what, their body won't attack it because it doesn't have any antigens. However, if you personally have O negative blood, because your body doesn't recognize any antigens, you can only receive O negative blood. So having O negative, you should donate blood a lot, but if you go to the hospital, they can only give you one kind of blood. I personally have A positive blood, which means I can receive O negative and O positive, and I can also receive A negative and A positive, because my body only recognizes A antigens and the Rh, the positive. But I can't receive any blood that has B antigens because my body would attack it. And I can donate my blood, and anyone who recognizes A as well can also receive my blood.